Alright guys, welcome to episode 5 of Legends and Luck and Lore. Today we're going to be talking about the classes' roles in combat and who's in the front, back, and middle. How are we going to start out?
Simple. The classes, they have roles per se. You have healers, supports, damage dealers, whatever. But every class can find a way to work into those roles. So we found that the easiest way to kind of make sure that you're using your class as efficiently as possible isn't based off of are you healing, are you dealing damage, are you taking damage, but it's based off where you're standing in combat. It's more of a distance thing than it is a what you're doing type thing.
So, not what you're doing, but where you are. Who's in the front line? Who's your hitters?
Yeah. So your front line, simple. Your frontliners are the people that are within melee range of those monsters you're fighting. Classes that usually fit into that: barbarians, fighters, monks, paladins. Your clerics and your druids can find ways into that too. And I guess rangers and rogues work their way in, but they don't want to be up there regularly. They want to get in and get out. And then a weird asterisk for warlock if you are a hexblade build. Besides that, warlocks shouldn't be in the front, but hexblades are so good in the front that it's...
Do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your character. Or this is generally what happens in combat.
Well, and obviously every class can be built to fit one of these roles better than it's normal, but we've just found that typically these classes fit best within these ranges. Those frontliners' jobs are... They want to be in the monster's face, dealing damage, doing consistent damage, and they kind of want to be locking them down, however that is. Whether it be a monk stunning strike, a barbarian or fighter with sentinel and just dealing a bunch of damage, or just being a threat. Just, this paladin hurts like a mofo when it hits me. I don't want that to happen anymore, so I need to hit it.
I know when I was playing a fighter, it was very much an inconvenience if we were fighting a spellcaster or anyone that would take the effort to run away. So, I think with the next one, I just said if I charged my enemy with 15 feet or 30 feet or whatever, drop them prone so they couldn't move, or it took half their movement so they couldn't get as far as away from me. And so it takes maybe not the effort, but just the building of that character to see how much you can lock them down, because if you're spellcasters, you can kind of do from anywhere. You can cast from long range, that's what they're meant to do. Most of them, anyways. But with your melee characters, you're up in their face, and if you're not, then you're just running around. Supporters can't support if you're not fighting.
Well, and I think that goes back to when we had our episode about the pillars of play in combat, and it's get creative. As a fighter, if you don't have sentinel or you're not dealing the damage you need to at the levels you're at or whatever it is, that's a great way to lock an enemy down, is be like, I want to use one of my attacks to knock him prone. And sweet, he's locked down. That takes a significant... If he only has 30 feet of movement, the enemy, he has to use 20 of that to get outside of your reach. 15 to stand up, and 5 to step away. And then you have to use half of yours to get back. It's just... That's a great way to be creative in combat as a frontliner. I love that. But then it just goes to show that those wizards, those spellcasters, they don't want to be. That's why we have those that want to sit at that mid-range or that long range. And those are a little less well-defined than just melee. The best way we've found to define that...
So we're moving mid-range or middle now?
Yeah.
Okay.
The best way we found to define that is your backline should be whatever it takes the enemy to dash to get to you. So that midline leaves all of that extra space. So if you're a frontliner, if you're that melee build, you want to be 5-10 feet with that enemy. And let's just assume it has 30 feet of movement, just that standard basic. All those middles, you should be no further than 30 feet back. maybe 35 if they use their 30.
Mm-hmm.
Weird math, but you shouldn't be more than 30 feet back. You're most effective at those ranges.
Okay, so what classes we have for mid-rangers?
So the ones that we found that are the best are your bard, your cleric, druid, some fighters, some rangers, some rogues, and then your casters can flex in and out of this spot. Your sorcerers, warlocks, wizards. They can flex in and out of that mid-range. But I think specifically with clerics, that mid-range is where you need to be living, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is where you were able to reach out and cast those support spells to the front line, the back line, whoever needs it. That's where you're most effective. A lot of the cleric subclasses get armor proficiency, whether it's medium or heavy. I think just the class actually gets medium.
Yeah.
I can't remember off the top, but I'm pretty sure just the class does. So you can take a hit so much better than a sorcerer or a wizard. There shouldn't be a lot of reasons where your wizard is in front of you, protecting you from whatever the threat is.
I know sometimes it depends on what the DM throws at you, but
Yeah.
suddenly combat is reversed and you've got all your casters in front. Like if something comes from behind that you didn't hear or, you were busy elsewhere. And so that's why there's the flex range, because if you're in the back and suddenly the bad guy's behind you, you gotta flex into the middle while your fighters or whatever are making your way the opposite direction.
Yeah. And that's where those clerics, those druids, those support classes, or those semi-melee builds, being in the middle is important there. Because if all of a sudden that enemy spellcaster teleports and they're behind your back line, now you're the melee. Like, now you're the front line for a round. And you need to get there so that your wizard isn't taking that hit. I know it's the joke. Oh, wizards are so squishy, but they are.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality of it. Your wizard, I guess Bladesinger we should have added to that front line, but some would argue a Bladesinger is actually more effective at long range, but that's a whole side episode, I guess.
I think one of these days we're going to go through each individual class. It might only take 10 minutes, it might take 20 minutes, but...
Yeah. Oh, wizard and cleric, that'll be a 40-minute. There's a lot of subclasses going on there.
There are. Anyways.
But that middle, that's where you're most effective. I think the strongest cleric, I shouldn't say strongest, because it really depends on the build, but the generally accepted strongest subclass is Twilight. And you have that 30-foot aura. You need to be in the middle to best spread that out amongst your team. Like, that's just how that is. A druid, that's another one that you have a lot of access to healing. Not that you need to be the designated healer, but...
I'd say you can be the support healer, but as long as you have your wild shapes, you can do some damage while you still have them. Yeah. And even after, once you get above a certain, level, you got a lot of spells for you, and you can switch them out whenever you want to.
Well, and it just helps to be within range to heal who needs it. And then there's those that you really don't want the enemy in your face. You want the enemy to have to dash to get to you, to burn that action to get to you. That's your back line.
Yep, those are the back line.
Bards can fit back there. They're usually a little more effective in the mid range, but they can fit there. Rangers and rogues fit there just as comfortably as they do in the mid line. And then your sorcerers, your warlocks, your wizards. That's where those three thrive. Those three thrive 40 feet away from the enemy. And for good reason. Like, those are really, really good classes. Eldritch Blast on a warlock is an insane thing to have as a cantrip. So customizable. Such a great way to control the battlefield and do exactly what you want almost. Why would you risk missing that? Because you're in melee and now you have disadvantage. Just stay away. Blast away. It's awesome. Do it. Lean into what you're good at.
So you got specific with the Eldritch Blast. Is there anything specific with other classes that they need to be doing? Like, what does the front line need to be doing?
So
anything specifically, or like the mid range?
I think if you want to go back to the front line really fast, I think a monk. Their big thing is those unarmed attacks. And there's not a lot of builds that let you do an unarmed attack from more than 5 or 10 feet away. There's a couple, and those are really cool. They're really fun. If you ever have a chance to punch someone from 20 feet away, do it. That's cool as hell. But you want to be in the front where you can do that. You're barbarian. Yeah, they can be effective using thrown weapons or even like a dexterity-based barbarian and using a ranged weapon. That can be effective. But you're most effective. You have that rage, that resistance. You want to be up there doing that. Any druid that's really leaning into the wild shape... Any druid that's really leaning into that wild shape, you have the most effective HP of any class or build. In the 2014 rulebook, a moon druid had double the effective HP of any barbarian, which is crazy for a caster. And you're giving up the ability to cast spells. You can still concentrate, but cast spells. But you can still burn spell slots and heal yourself. It's just a crazy amount of HP. That kind of a druid build, go use that HP pool. Go make the enemy burn through your HP. Because if they're attacking you, they're
not attacking the other squishies.
Yeah. You could... I've seen a group where there's a wizard and a moon druid, and the moon druid has 10 times the effective HP as a wizard. It's just... They would have to kill the wizard 10 times to knock you down once. That's a crazy thing to say out loud, and it's use that HP pool. Go be a nuisance right in its face.
I think I couldn't turn into an elemental, but I could summon an elemental. And so, you can... If you're on the let's go midline, and you need another distraction on the battlefield, you could summon more creatures.
Yeah.
He doesn't like it when I do it, because it adds more chaos to the board.
Rephrase. I don't like it when he does it, and then I have to keep track of those monsters. If he takes care of all that, I'm all for it. I think it's super cool.
I mean, you already have enough to manage.
Anyways. Yeah, that's my whole thing. If you're going to let your players use those conjure animals, summon whatever, and they're going to put 8 wolves on the board, let them do it, but just be like, now you have to manage 8 monsters. It makes your life so much easier. Tiny TM tips from Toby.
Because you're already managing...
You're probably managing 8 monsters halfway through combat anyways.
Yeah, and they don't last very long if they're wolves, but... Share the monster managing...
Burden. Share the monster burden with your players. But no, that's a great way. If you want to be a midline, summon stuff. That's a great way. But if you're the one that's summoning those, I can't remember off the top of my head which spells are okay, summon Fiend. When you lose concentration, now the Fiend's fighting against you. You really don't want to be losing concentration. It's probably best not to be in melee.
Yeah.
And I think back to those backlines, the wizards, the sorcerers, they have a lot of really good concentration spells. Haste, polymorph, fly, all of those. You don't want to be losing concentration on those. You want to keep people away from you as much as you can.
So I think we hit all of them. Did we hit front, middle, back?
That's the 3. DMs, remember your monsters can do this too. You don't need to put your caster monsters in the front. I also want to add in...
Depends on how smart they are.
The new 2024 rules... Should I pull it up? I'm not going to pull it up. That's going to be too much work. But it does allow for opportunity attacks to be a spell that targets the thing running by. So those backliners, you could sit in the middle, and as your frontliners run by you, now you're reaction casting haste on the barbarian as he's getting to the front line. That's where a wizard in the midline is such a crazy good idea. It's I know I'm going to go before my fighter. He's not a dex build, negative dex or whatever, hard into constitution and strength. I'm going to park 10 feet in front of him, let him come in and out of my range on the way to the front line. Hey, take 2 actions, buddy.
Yeah.
And now I'm in the back and I'm safe, and I got a reaction cast out of haste.
So let's say I can't remember off the top of my head, are what we call the frontliners more inclined to have higher initiative?
I wouldn't say that per se. I would say it helps if you are...
Does it depend on the build?
It definitely depends on the build.
Okay.
But it doesn't need to. I'm, at the moment, playing a cleric. I am probably the hardest person to kill in our party.
Well, you also play a lot.
But it's just like I have a really high AC. Our paladin hasn't been able to go to a couple sessions, so I think I have the highest AC. Our fighter is built for range. It's a gunslinger. He's a gunslinger. And then it's a rogue and a sorcerer. So my cleric is sometimes the de facto melee. Like, I'm kind of the de facto get in the front as a cleric. I'm also the only one with a negative dex modifier.
Yeah.
So, like, I wouldn't say worry about, oh, I'm a barbarian, I need to have a high initiative to get in the front. Because you can be effective with a average or below average initiative. Mm-hmm. That's totally fine. In fact, in that situation I just described, where a wizard might want to cast haste on you as a reaction, it might be better to have a lower initiative. Like,
because then you can, if you're going to give someone a buff, you can plan it out beforehand. Granted, you're not taking time away from other players on their turn, but you can plan it out beforehand. It is above table knowledge, but you could say, hey, our characters know each other well enough to actually do this in-game.
I don't think any DM would get mad at you guys for planning cool combos as characters. Most DMs, even when they're playing their big bad and they need to like really lock in and be the enemy, when they see that shit, when they see that stuff, they're going to stand up and be like, gonna say it again, holy shit, that was so cool. Because it was. Like, that's just cool.
Yeah.
So, like, I would say when you and your party are getting together and you're starting to figure out the best way, where should I be standing in combat? Talk to your other players. Talk to that.
I think we were doing it was a one-shot where I was a dwarf, and I don't remember what Kendall was, but we had decided that we had been together for a while. Mm-hmm. And he would regularly, like, throw me because I was a dwarf barbarian. And so I would just, like, have an attack as soon as I hit them.
Yeah.
And that was a cool combo because he had high strength and I had high, to hit or whatever. And so he would throw me and I'd get to hit the monster while I was in the air.
Do that stuff. So, back to the original point. Your frontliners don't need to have the highest initiative. It's probably going to be your rogue anyways. Mm-hmm. And your rogue doesn't, if he's in the front, he doesn't want to stay in the front.
That's why the bonus action disengage.
Yep. They're built not to. I think this whole episode can boil down to just learn your effective range. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't like getting hit. My character is not very good at getting hit. Okay, back the hell up. Mm-hmm. My character is really good at being in people's faces and being a problem. Sweet. Get your ass up there. And then from there, start coming up with cool combos in that shuffle. Because you guys are going to go into rooms in different orders all the time. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to use that first turn to like, okay, let's get into our ranges and do this right. And you have your action, bonus action, and movement. Use your movement. Use it. Use the map. Explore your battle map. Use it.
Should we save that for... I don't know if it's a big enough thing to talk about for another episode, but how to effectively use your turn, but that comes down to what class you are and what level you're at.
I think that's a subheading in the classes episodes, probably. We also have failed to mention one class in talking about these distances.
The Artificer?
The Artificer. Yeah. The Artificer is so freaking flexible with your infusions and those different subclasses, and they have spells, and they have weapons, and holy crap are they flexible. They can heal, so you want to be in the middle. Oh, but Armorer, now you want to be in the front. Oh, but Battlesmith, back to the middle. Alchemist, middle or the back, like
Comes down to how you build it and what you want to do with it.
Artificer is the perfect example of, holy crap, I could build this a million different ways, and my role in combat changes. And as you switch out infusions, you might change your role.
Mm-hmm.
Artificer's the exception to all of the rules we talked about.
I tried to multi-class and was like, I think we build a level 11 characters.
I think so.
Yeah, and I took level 6 in Artificer and I went, that's really complicated. So, I don't know if you want to do it. If you're going to build one, I'd say start from a lower level, build your way up. It kind of makes you a lot more comfortable in
Artificers are so cool. If you want to build stuff, do it. They're so cool. Like, outside of combat, I would say the single coolest class. Mm-hmm. Like, the ability to play with magic, such a cool concept. Like, that's so cool. But, episode for another day.
Yeah, so we covered front, middle, and back, and that's what we had. I
think that's all we had.
I think we might be sub 20 minutes, but that's fine.
Yeah, I think we look great right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Time.